We are live. What is up, y'all? Welcome back to another Fish the Moment live stream. Tonight, Randy and I are going to be talking about some techniques that we use to trigger big bass in the summertime. Randy's going to be covering the shallow water tactics, and I'm going to be talking about the offshore strategies. So it should be a really good stream tonight. Randy, how's it going?
Doing good, Johnny, man. And I love summertime fishing. It's just like if it was up to me, I would just want nothing but a t-shirt and shorts on. And when you get out in the morning, you can get out there at 7 o'clock in the morning and you can run down the lake with t-shirts and shorts on and be comfortable. So this is my favorite time of year to fish.
For sure, same here. The offshore fishing is always really good this time of year, and we can always get after it, both shallow and offshore, especially with all the high water we've had recently. So, should be a really good stream. Before we jump into all the content, first thing I want to do is announce the winner of our giveaway last week for the Bridgeford case of beef jerky. As you guys know, we recently got sponsored for the podcast by Bridgeford Foods. Huge shout out to them. We are giving away packages of the Sweet Baby Ray's Bridgeford beef jerky. I'm still addicted to this stuff, Randy. My wife is always asking me, like, when are we getting our next shipment from Bridgeford? Like, we rinse it out every single time. We just eat it all. So we're trying to save some for a fishing trip we have this Friday, but it's so hard to, like, not eat it. So it's some good stuff here.
Yeah, it's like a candy bar. Once you open the bag out, you just got to finish it off, man.
And one thing that's interesting is it has a lot of good protein. I've been doing a lot of CrossFit workouts recently, so the protein is helping me, and there's not really that many calories. For a whole bag, it's like, 200 calories. So for me, it's great too. Like working out, it's like a good, healthy snack. So I'm happy with it right now. I'm loving the Bridgeford beef jerky.
Yeah.
So anyways, well, we have our winner that we picked last week, and what the question he had asked was basically, what is his favorite, we asked, what is your favorite lure, brand, and color? And the winner for the case of Bridgeford beef jerky this week is Matt Lane. His comment was his favorite summertime lure is a Strike King 6XD Chartreuse Blackback. And he said, here's the kicker. He likes to throw it in 2 to 8 feet of water. And he says it drives the bass crazy. And that's actually one of my favorite ways to catch fish on Lake Dardanelle, Randy, is throwing a 6XD crankbait and grinding the bill off of it in like 4 to 8 feet of water. A really good way to catch fish. Very underutilized. And so because that was my favorite summer technique as well, I picked Matt for the winner this week. So Matt, if you could just send us an email to info@fishthemoment.com, we're going to send you a free case of beef jerky. We just need a mailing address and we're good to go. Now, I did say last week that I was going to tabulate all the results from everyone's comments and everything. And I was going to do that. But Randy, we had something that came up that I needed to take advantage of and I needed to get a video out. And that's that I actually got to go out with Humminbird Pro Harvey Horn and test out the brand new Humminbird Mega Live, which is awesome. So basically, I was able to go out there, get screenshots of the Mega Live from Humminbird. I was able to go out and actually use it on the water, fish, film the whole experience, and I'm going to be posting a YouTube video about it tomorrow on the channel, 7 a.m. So if you guys are watching this right now live, tune in at 7 a.m. tomorrow to get a sneak peek of the Humminbird Mega Live. It's going to be the first video out there of it, and I tried to do the best job I could explaining the functionalities, capabilities, everything like that. And if you're watching this back afterwards, just leave this live stream right now, go watch that video, and then you can always come back to the live stream. But if you're watching this tomorrow morning or some point in the week, just go to the main Fish the Moment channel, watch that Humminbird Mega Live video. It is going to be fire.
Yeah, that's pretty good. It's being the world premiere of that technology. I mean, that's I'm really curious to see it myself on there. I without giving too much away, I'm really curious to see how it compares to the Garmin and the Lowrance unit. So it's, I think a lot of guys will be too, especially this time of year.
For sure. It's going to be, kind of one of those videos where since it's kind of not prototype, it's kind of like the beta version. The pros haven't seen it yet, or just got it, and basically they were still testing it and working through some of the kinks. It's not the final version, and I'll talk about it in the video, so it's not like the final version, but I'm pretty excited to at least show you guys what they have, and I think you guys will be a little bit surprised at the results of the video. There's been a lot of hate going around about the Mega Live from the Instagram teasers and other YouTube videos. People have just been, it's just been throwing shade at that Mega Live for so long, like the last 2, 3, 4 weeks. So hopefully my video will maybe give you a different perspective. Maybe it won't. I don't know. Maybe I just trash on it too. Who knows? You have to watch the video to see what the opinion is. So anyways, that's pretty exciting. I know, Randy, you're not going to like it regardless because it's forward-facing sonar, but maybe you still check out the video.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd use it too much, flipping laydowns in 12 inches of water with 6 inches of visibility. So may not apply to my summer techniques too much.
For sure. Well, hey, you never know. I'm still on that get Randy to use live scope or forward facing sonar bandwagon. I'm rooting for it. I'm sure one of these days I'm gonna get you hooked into it. I don't know how. I don't know what I'm gonna have to do. Maybe I have to trick you into using a boat with it or something. But we're gonna try to get you in a boat with it for sure.
Hey, I think we should do a challenge video where all we have is an 8-foot stick, and we have to go along and we have to push a stick in the water to see how deep it is, and let's see how we do on that.
Oh, that's awesome. That would be fun. That would be really fun.
Yeah, we'll do one of those, and we'll do the one on live imaging technology. So just keep it even,
and see how we do. I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
That'd be fun. Real quick, Steve over here, over in the chat, he's saying, so let me get this right. Bridgeford sends Johnny a case of beef jerky a week. He gives away one package, and him and his wife eat the rest. I wish we could do that. Honestly, that's a great scheme right there. But no, Bridgeford sends it straight from the factory, so it goes straight to the winner. I do need to let you guys know for the Bridgeford giveaway this week what we're going to be talking about. And so what I want you guys to do is if you want to be eligible for the giveaway for Bridgeford beef jerky, what I want you to do is actually go watch the video tomorrow on the Main Fish the Moment channel. And if you're watching this on the live chat, you're going to have to come back and comment on the video. If you're watching this after the fact, then you can just go watch the Main Fish the Moment channel video about Mega Live and let me know what you think about it. I want to hear your impressions of what you think about Mega Live compared to other sonars. And then next week on the live stream, we'll spend some time discussing it, what I thought about it, how it compares, and kind of the future of forward-facing sonar. So let me know what you think down in the comments, and anyone who comments on the video about what they thought about my video, and obviously you have to comment after you watch the video. So if I see any comments on this video before 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, I know you're not watching the video, so you're disqualified. But if you do, if you comment on the video with your impressions of Mega Live, you get a chance to win some Bridgeford beef jerky. So definitely take advantage of that. So anyways, Randy, that is that for right now. So let's jump into the main topic tonight, and that is how to trigger big bass in the summertime. And we kind of have a list here of things that we feel like are the 4 main things you need to do to trigger big bass. And the first thing that I feel like a lot of guys underestimate about catching big bass in the summertime is that big bass really like fast-moving baits. And what I mean by a fast-moving bait is not just a bait that is reeled quickly, but also a bait that falls quickly, a bait that is moving through the water fast. The faster your bait is moving, it seems like, when it's in proximity to a big bass, the better chance you have of triggering that bite. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the offshore baits that I use and some of the offshore techniques, and then Randy will talk about some of his shallow water techniques as well. So, Randy, actually, let me have you take the lead here and talk to us about some of the ways you use fast-moving baits to trigger those summertime bass up shallow.
Yeah, a lot of it depends on the part of the country I'm in, because like I said, if I'm fishing in the southeast part of the country where there's a lot of like matted vegetation, hydrilla, hyacinths, that type of stuff, obviously punching that big heavy weight, like the 1.25 ounce up to 2 ounce weight, getting that reaction strike in the summertime is going to be a real key deal. And the other time is sort of like a different type of flipping situation when you're in any type of a wood cover, whether it be laydowns around docks, brush, and that type of stuff, is using a really heavy jig, like a 1 ounce jig in the summertime of the year in shallow water is a real key to generating those bigger bites. And a lot of times when you're using the big jig like that, you're not getting a lot of bites, but when you get one, that line just jumps 2 foot in the air, and it's usually a good one when they hit it. And, you're talking about water visibilities of less than 3 feet. Water depth of less than 3 feet, water visibilities of normally less than 2 feet in there. And that's been a really good producer for me as far as speed. The other thing that works good, there's 2 other applications that I found that really generate quality bites in man-made impoundments. And one is just like what you said, is the speed of retrieve, specifically in my situation, around big square bill crankbaits. I'll use that Mega Bass 2.0 S crank. Sometimes I'll use like a 3-inch balsa square bill, something like that. And you've even seen it with me, Johnny. You fish some of that square bill stuff in the summertime, and it's all about the speed. It's all about generating that reaction strike with that big square bill crankbait that's moving a lot of water in that right combination of water clarity, cover, and depth. And that's the whole key on there, because when you're dealing with jig fishing or crankbait fishing, anything like that in the summertime of the year, for the most part, I'm looking in those parts of the lake that have, more stained water and a diversity of cover in that stained water. So it's a combination of the speed of retrieve and the cover both. And the last thing that I look for is probably the number one baits that I've caught the most big fish on the summertime with the speed of retrieve variations is a big buzz bait and a whopper plopper. For me, when I'm fishing summertime, big baits like that, I'm catching these fish in the middle of the day. I'm not getting these good bites early in the morning. These good bites come after everybody has put it down. And it's basically about burning those baits back to the boat in a real erratic fashion. Whether if I'm fishing a whopper plopper or like a zoom frog, horny toad, buzz bait, all those baits that have a lot of surface commotion that you reel straight back to the boat. It's all about keeping that rod tip high, reeling that bait fast through the water column, and really just stop and go as much as you can, getting that bait moving fast and real erratic. And it's a deal where you're not going to get a lot of bites, but you get in the right combination of the cover, the water clarity, and that type of stuff. You can generate some big bites under those conditions. So from the shallow water perspective, for me, it's the punch rig, heavy punch rig. It's the big 1-ounce jig. It's the big square bills moving fast, whopper plopper, horny toad, and buzz bait.
Good deal there. Yeah, that's the thing that a lot of guys I feel like don't understand when they go up fishing shallow in the summer is they think that because it's hot and it's, muggy, stuff like that, you need to fish real slow, methodical, use light baits, try to trigger those bites because they're lethargic. That's just not the case at all. And just to give you one example, guys, of that jig deal that Randy's talking about, I was fishing high school fishing world finals and finished second out of like 200 boats. And the way we were catching them, we were fishing on Lake Dardanelle, which is shallow, muddy lake. And we went to this big stretch of lily pads here. And the edge of those lily pads were in no more than 4 feet of water. And guys were going through these lily pads with frogs like crazy. Everyone was throwing a frog down these lily pads. It was just like a circus, like a merry-go-round. People were just going back and forth on these pads with a frog, and there were other stretch of pads as well. What I found, though, is that in practice, if we went right behind everybody and flipped a 1-ounce jig in 4 foot of water through those pads, we could get bit behind everybody. I mean, like, so many people were fishing these pads, and we could go right behind anyone in the entire lake flipping a 1-ounce jig. It literally hit the bottom in like half a second because it was falling so fast. I mean, as soon as it got in the water, it was on the bottom, and basically those fish would bite it as soon as that bait hit the bottom, as it went straight past their face. And we would go behind everyone flipping in 4 foot of water with a 1-ounce jig and absolutely crush them. And we had some really big 5 and 6 pounders doing it throughout the week. Obviously finished second doing it, so it was a really good pattern. And I feel like there's so many applications where you can use a heavy jig, not even just in lily pads. We caught some fish as well, like in the backs of pockets and coves and stuff like this, where you had just isolated laydowns and stuff like that. And we were flipping on isolated laydowns in 2 foot of water, 3 foot of water with a 1-ounce jig. And that was middle of the summer, July, and getting big bites. Again, like Randy mentioned, it's not a numbers deal, but it's definitely a big bite deal. And I think that that's just really overlooked. We're not talking about fishing a 1-ounce jig offshore in the middle of the lake. We're literally talking about in the middle of the summer up shallow. So the other thing that, obviously I do is I do offshore fishing. And so similar concepts apply there. And a couple baits that I throw a lot, guys, in the summertime are really big crankbaits, really big, heavy spoons. These are two of the best ways you can trigger big bass. And it seems like, we'll kind of get into this a little bit later, a bigger bait also helps as well. We'll talk about that here in a second. But really what you'll find is like a bait like this. This is a 6.5 inch mini Magnum Ben Parker flutter spoon. It's a 2-ounce spoon, so it's really, really heavy. It's kind of hard to cast, but this thing falls pretty quickly. And what I find is that with this spoon, falling fast and then basically ripping it up off the bottom really fast, it will trigger so many big fish to bite. And you can go throw a football jig, you can throw a wacky ray worm, a drop shot, all these other baits on these fish in the summertime and not get a single bite. But then you can pull out this big Magnum flutter spoon and rip it past their face really quickly and catch a lot of fish. You don't even need a heavy bait, honestly, to do it. Another great bait is like a hair jig. This is just a 1/2 ounce hair jig, but the thing with it is that I'll let that thing sink to the bottom, and then when it hits the bottom, I'm going to reel it super fast, 7 or 8 times, to pop it off the bottom and bring it right past those fish's face, and it will trigger a lot of bites from those inactive big largemouth. And if I kind of pull up a little graphic here that I just put together while Randy was talking, we have a big bass here. Let's say it's a 5 or 6 pound bass. And what you basically do with that flutter spoon or with the hair jig is you get that bait on the bottom, let it sink down the bottom, and then rip it up off the bottom as fast as possible. The way I do this is either by reeling it really fast or basically setting the hook on the spoon so it pops up really fast off the bottom, then falls back down and flutters past those fish. And what you'll find is that the majority of the fish aren't biting that bait as it's slowly fluttering down to the bottom. What happens is that that bait is pulled up past their face, and as soon as that bait stops and starts to fall, that's when you get 98% of your bites. It's not when that spoon is actually falling. Now, I do get more bites when the spoon is falling in the fall, in like the September, October, November time of the year. But in the summer, most of your bites on that big spoon are going to be right after you rip it really high off the bottom and right as it begins to fall. And I have a complete video explaining how to fish a flutter spoon on the main Fish the Moment channel. If you want more info, literally just go there and type in Fish the Moment flutter spoons. I have a complete guide, what to look for on the fish finder, the type of areas, structure, cover, everything like that, plus the spoons I use, the setup, everything. So definitely check out that video. But really, it's that aggressive motion past those fish that triggers all the bites. Another thing I do that really helps is throwing like a big crankbait. This is the Megabass Big M 7.5. This is literally the biggest crankbait you can get on the market. Here's that 6.5 inch Magnum flutter spoon, and then here is just like a regular football jig. So you can see that bait, actually it's a pretty big football jig, but you can see that bait is really, really big. It's 5 inches long, and the reason I throw this bait, it's expensive, but the reason I throw it, I don't throw it around brush piles, but I throw it around ledges and stuff where I'm not going to get it hung up. But the reason I throw this bait is because it is a big bait that pulls a lot of water, moves a lot of water, but I can also reel it really fast. It doesn't drag that bad, and the bill isn't as cupped as like a 10XD. So you can actually reel this bait faster than a 10XD crankbait or any of those other big Magnum crankbaits, but it still gets down there to that 20-25 foot range. And I can reel this thing as fast as physically possible back to the boat, and the faster you reel this thing, the more bites you're going to get. And what I'll do is I'll reel it really, really fast for maybe 5-10 seconds, then just kill it for half a second, and then keep reeling it super fast. And that triggers so many big bites for me in the summer, especially on ledges. And I'll throw that bait even in like 15 foot of water when other guys are throwing a 6XD crankbait. I'll go to that bigger bait and reel it faster, really, really fast, and I get so many big bites. So that's really the deal, guys, with triggering big bass in the summertime. Speed is your friend. Whether it's fishing a topwater fast, fishing a crankbait fast, a floater spoon, you just need to fish bass or fish fast for those bass, and you're going to trigger them. Would you agree, Randy?
Yeah, one thing I'll add to that, the comment you made on the spoon, as far as they get it when you jerk it up hard. If you guys remember, they had a Bassmaster Elite Series tournament on Lake St. Clair 4 or 5 years ago that Jason Christie won.
Yeah.
He was doing the same thing with a heavy tube. He was taking like a 3/4 ounce tube, ripping it up off the bottom and triggering those big smallmouth to hit that you wouldn't have caught if he was using like a 1/4 ounce or 3/8 that most people use. So that's a big deal there too. And real quick, I want to answer this question. I think Aaron was asking about how do you choose between the jig and the punch rig in the summertime. For me, the punch rig is all about vegetation. If I'm pitching hyacinths, matted grass, pads, that type of stuff. And the jig is more if I'm fishing flooded bushes, laydowns, wood. So wood for the jig, punch rig for vegetation.
Good deal. Perfect. So that's really the deal there, guys, with moving your baits fast. I cannot emphasize that enough. That's the number one thing I feel like that allows both Randy and I to trigger more bites, whether it's getting a bait that falls faster than your average bait, or a bait that you can work faster, or like a spoon that you can rip off the bottom really quickly. You just need something that changes direction fast or moves quickly. You'll get a lot bigger bites. The second thing that we do to generate more big bites in the summertime is kind of cliche, I know, but it's using bigger baits. That's kind of like an overused concept of bigger baits equal bigger fish. It's not always the case, obviously, but what I found is that there's actually a threshold with big baits nowadays. Big baits are now very relative, just because guys are getting used to throwing bigger and bigger baits and bass are getting more accustomed to them. Back in the day, a big bait used to be a Strike King 6XD crankbait. It's 4 inches long. That was a big crankbait, especially compared to some of the older crankbaits guys were throwing back in the day. But now, this mini Magnum Ben Parker flutter spoon is almost considered small when fishing offshore. 6.5 inches. I find that fish sometimes won't even eat this bait, even though it's 6.5 inches long, because it's too small for those fish. They won't react to it. I actually throw the 8-inch version even more often than this one because it triggers more big bites. Same thing with that giant Big M 7.5 Megabass crankbait. It's the biggest crankbait on the market you can get. And yeah, it's pricey, but it's worth it. It gets more bites. The bigger baits, and I'm talking like oversized baits, really big baits, will generate more of those big bites. Now, you're not going to get nearly as many bites on them, and I only pull those baits out when I really want to go after a kicker, catch one big fish. But especially if you're on the offshore school or fishing offshore in general, throwing it just a lot bigger, bulkier bait will get you more bites. Very cliche, very obvious, but think oversized in the summertime. Would you agree there, Randy?
Yeah, it's a little bit different in the shallow water application because for me, from my experience in catching big fish in shallow water in the summertime, there's only one bait that I go big with. Everything else, if I'm using, crankbaits or, jigs or that type of stuff, I'm staying with the normal sizes. A lot of times I even go downsize later in the summer, particularly like when you get into August and September, I downsize everything. I'll go to like a little 1/4 ounce spinnerbait. I'll downsize my crankbaits. I'll go to a trick worm, something like that. And once you do that, when you catch a big fish, it's more out of the haphazard. It's more just like it's a random occurrence. You can't really target specifically big fish. In my experience, once that water temperature hits 80 degrees in the summertime of the year, and you're dealing with shallow water cover, and when I'm talking about shallow water cover, I'm talking about primarily that cover in anywhere between 1 to 4 foot of water, stained water visibility of 1 to 2 foot in that range. The only time that I have found by upsizing to a big bait that will actually up your odds, the percentages of catching a big fish and your grade of big fish will come up, is going to a big worm. And I'm talking about, my favorite is that Zoom 12-inch Old Monster Magnum. They make a 10-inch Old Monster. They make a 12-inch Old Monster Magnum worm. And I have seen that they'll bite that bait, I guess because it doesn't telegraph itself. It's quiet, it's silent, looks like a big snake. But that, guys, is one of my top baits. If you are flipping any type of flooded cover in the summertime, like any type of willows, bushes, flooded trees, whatever, or even if you're fishing shallow laydowns, you can take that big 10, 12-inch worm and it goes sort of against what we just talked about, speed a little bit. I put that big worm on a fairly light sinker, like a 3/16 or a 1/4 ounce sinker, because I actually think that worm is so big it looks like a big snake. And I'll pitch it in and around that shallow cover and just work it real slow through that. Sometimes I'll even swim it. I'll pitch it up in the lay down. If the water's dirty, sometimes in the summertime of the year, even in shallow water, you can catch those bass just by swimming that worm in dirty water, just like 12 inches underneath the water. I've done that. I used to whack them at Truman Lake doing that. Back when Truman was really good and there was a lot of standing timber in the lake, I'd go up there with that 10 and 12-inch worm and fish those shallow, dirty, standing fence rows and tree rows with that thing and just catch a bunch of big ones. But for me, that's the only thing that really works that'll give you reproducible results is that big worm in shallow water. If I try to upgrade and go to like with a big bladed spinner bait or like a big 3-inch square bill crankbait, a lot of times something that displaces a lot of water, I don't get near the bites that I do if I go to that big worm. That big worm it will get you a good bite in the summertime of the year in shallow water. Well, I think Johnny, can you still hear me? I lost my.
Oh, you're good. Sorry, I
Uh,
have myself muted.
okay, I didn't know if that was me or not. I couldn't hear you.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry, guys. So what I was trying to say there is, basically, with Randy, I was saying that he brought that to light about using the only the big worm up shallow with big baits. It's just interesting to see the difference between the offshore fishing and the shallow fishing, and that I feel like I need to really upsize my baits to consistently get bigger fish. Where Randy says basically just go to that big worm or then stay with your standard baits. I've been going to bigger square bills, a bigger profile spinner bait in the summer, and obviously it hasn't been as successful for me. That's why I fish offshore now, because I didn't know what I was doing apparently. But now I do, so now I'm going to be dangerous, Randy. Any more of these shallow water challenges we have going on? You are 3-0 when we go fish up shallow in these single bait challenges. So I need to step my game up a little bit. I'm going to keep going at you at these shallow challenges though, because I need to take one of these eventually, and we're actually going to Table Rock later this week to do a top water challenge. So either I'm just don't know when to give up, and I should just take you offshore for a challenge just to build my confidence back up, or what. But I'm going to keep after it.
Yeah, I can't wait till this week. We like I said, this is our fourth shallow challenge in a row, and yeah, we're due to go fish for some suspended deep bass in one of these here pretty quick. But you got to remember, guys, I was 0-7 with him last summer when we were doing all the deep stuff. So it's just the universe has a way of balancing itself.
For sure, for sure. And it's interesting, even I found that, just as a little tangent, when we were doing those shallow versus offshore challenges, I would feel like I was better off when I was forced to fish offshore, because when I have the option to go fish up shallow, I do worse. I honestly don't catch them as well as if I just force myself to fish offshore all day. And I think that that's something that's very telling from these challenges as well, that I kind of want to, maybe touch on at some point, is like, I'm trying to put myself in your wheelhouse. I'm trying to beat you at your own game, which is not going to work. I've seen that now after 3 challenges here. So if I'm going to have a chance to win, I either need to do something that's off the wall shallow that you're not doing, and that's still risky, or we need to go back to the shallow versus offshore to give myself a better chance. I'm not sure what the best idea is, but I'm going to keep grinding out for a few more challenges, see if I can steal one of them from you.
Well, I think a lot of people that if you guys watch the videos, Johnny and I, we don't get any practice. We really don't know what's going on at the lake. By the time we get everything set up and I usually have to go pick up Elijah. So we got short days. We're like on the water for like 5 or 6 hours and don't know anything about it. So when you're like that, sometimes you hit on, how to catch them real quick. And sometimes you need more time. And so a lot of it is just, again, it's random if you get on them or not.
For sure. One question I did want to answer really quick, it was from Guy B. He says, I wonder if snapping a tube like Randy described would work for the pesky little spotted bass. That's from Gaston, North Carolina. I've actually tried that offshore, Guy, for those spotted bass. I don't catch the fish on the spotted bass in a tube nearly as well as I do on a hair jig. Just pick up this is a Cumberland Pro Preacher prayer jig. It's a 1/2 ounce. That works a lot better for me on spotted bass. I don't know why. It'll actually get really big spotted bass to bite it, but I have not been as successful getting those fish to eat the tube, the spotted bass to eat the tube, except for maybe like right in the post spawn. But most of the year, they don't like that tube for me. Have you had any success with that, Randy?
No, I've done that a little bit with like hopping swim baits off the bottom for spotted bass, but not for tubes. It seems like it seems like for something, you got to have a good smallmouth population for that tube to work really good.
For sure. And another question from Guy says, is the speed on the Magnum crankbaits only good for the spotted or for the largemouth? No, I catch big spotted bass and smallmouth on Table Rock on this big crankbait here, burning it. So all three species will eat that thing, no problem.
Yeah.
Okay,
and,
so go ahead.
Bill
Randy.
was asking real quick, hey Bill, about what line type size you use with the big worms. Normally, I'm using anywhere between 17 to 25 pound test. Seagar and Vizex, depending upon the cover, but it's normally at least 17 on there.
Yep, for sure. Oh, by the way, one more comment from Aaron here. He says, we need some Northeast lessons, some lessons for up north on natural lakes. Well, guys, I finally got your back. You northern guys out there who have been complaining, I'm just kidding, but who've been asking for some instruction on northern lakes. Most of our audience is not from up north, so we don't talk about it as much as we probably should. But this month, actually next month, it'll be in July. If you head over to fishthemoment.com and go to our virtual seminars page, you'll see that we hooked you up. You guys up north, we're doing a natural lakes seminar. Randy and I are going to be talking about how to fish natural lakes up north, specifically northern natural lakes. So if you guys are up from Pennsylvania, New York, Wisconsin, Minnesota, that area of the country, this is the seminar for you. Natural Lake Seminar. Randy's going to be covering all of the smallmouth fishing from all of his experience fishing on tour, on smallmouth lakes. And then I grew up fishing northern largemouth in Wisconsin. That's where I spent the first half of my life, and it's actually where I learned to fish. So I'll be covering offshore grass fishing, shallow grass fishing for largemouth, but basically any grassy lakes. I'll be covering that. Randy's got you covered on all the Great Lakes smallmouth stuff and also everything in between. So this is going to be a great seminar about kind of like bass behavior on natural lakes and how it's different from what we talk about on our southern impoundments. We'll also be talking about how you can translate some of the information that we talk about in our seminars or in our videos to the natural lakes. We talk a lot about southern man-made reservoirs, and we'll talk about how you can translate the information on southern man-made reservoirs to your natural lakes. So definitely check that out. There's only 30 spots available, and I have a feeling that this seminar is going to fill up really, really fast. So definitely check that out. And basically, this seminar is going to be covering, I saw from Travis, it will be covering New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. All those states are covered in this. It's not just Wisconsin, just the ones I mentioned. So New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, all those states, this seminar will apply perfectly to them. So definitely check that out. And that's just all I wanted to ask or talk about there. So sign up for that seminar if you're interested. And then also, just a reminder, I didn't talk about or I mentioned this at the beginning of the stream, but if you guys are interested in potentially winning a case of Bridgeford beef jerky, you'll get a free case shipped straight to your house. All you need to do is tomorrow go to the main Fish of the Moment channel and watch my video on Mega Live. We're actually going out. I went out in the boat with Humminbird Pro, Harvey Horn, and we actually took the Mega Live out on the water. I do a full in-depth video showing screenshots, screen recordings, everything of Mega Live. We catch some fish with it. I'll show you how to track the bait, everything. So you'll be able to get the first really good look at what Mega Live looks like. If you watch that video, then come back over to the Fish of the Moment Live channel and make a comment about what you thought about Mega Live. Just let me know what you think. You will have a chance to win a package of, or a case, 8 packs of Bridgeford beef jerky. So definitely do that. If you're watching this live right now, obviously you're going to have to go watch the video tomorrow morning. I'm posting it at 7 a.m. on the main Fish of the Moment channel. Go watch that video. Come back, leave a comment about what you thought about Mega Live, and I'll know if you cheated, because if you post your comment before 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, I know you didn't go watch the video. So that's the way it is. But definitely check that out, and also huge shout out to Bridgeford for supporting the podcast, sponsoring the podcast, doing giveaways every week. Great company that supports bass fishing, and even better, they actually have an amazing product that I'm literally addicted to now. Thanks to Randy after giving me free samples. It's kind of like he's giving me the free samples at the boat ramp. It's like it's addicting. He's like the beef jerky dealer. That's how I think about it. But it's a good deal right there. So, but any other comments, Randy, about the seminar or Mega Live or anything like that?
The seminar, guys, is going to be great. I love fishing smallmouth up north, natural lakes. I mean, it is like, it's a different world up there. And man, you guys that live up in New York especially are spoiled. I mean, you guys have got such awesome fishing. I mean, there's more 3 to 5 pound bass in that part of the country than anywhere. And by the time August rolls around, I get sick of hearing all these Elite Series guys talk about 4 and 5 pound smallmouth, because that's all you see on Facebook. That every one of them is holding up 4 and 5 pounder smallmouth for like 2 months in a row on the northern swing. So I got a lot of good juice for you guys, man. I probably fished 30 tournaments up in that part of the country, Bassmaster, FLW tournaments, and got a lot of good secrets we'll share with you guys in that seminar.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Excited about that. Excited about, getting that content out. We've been promising to talk about more about natural lakes for a while. And the thing is it's tough because we live in Arkansas, Missouri area. So if we were going to go, we could go do one trip and do a couple of videos on natural lakes, but we aren't going to be able to do consistent content up there. And it's really tough for YouTube algorithm and everything. If I do a northern video, even though I know you guys in the live stream are like, do it, that video will get 4,000 views. It's YouTube algorithm. It really sucks the way it all works. I could make 3 of the best videos on natural lakes up north. No one would watch them because the algorithm wouldn't suggest them to any of my viewers. It's just the way it goes. No one would watch it, even though the people who watched it would love it. So it's kind of the nature of the beast. YouTube is really tricky, Randy, with the algorithm and all that stuff. So there's content we want to do that we literally can't, because even though you guys I know would love it, YouTube won't recommend it. So there's no way we can actually do anything with it. We can't make a living off of it if we don't get any views.
Yeah. It's it's a different world up there, though. It's sort of like fishing down south in Florida. It's like Florida fishing and New York fishing for smallmouth is completely different than fishing man-made impoundments. And there's a lot of different tricks to know about how to catch them up there. I mean, I think even more so up north than there is down south. So it'll be a good time, man.
For sure. It's kind of cool because I grew up in Wisconsin, so I learned how to do all of the fishing up there. And coming down south, it was completely different. The fishing is so different down here, and I had to relearn how to fish literally from scratch. You almost have to relearn how to fish because bass behave differently, forage is different, everything is different. And we'll cover all that in the seminar, but pretty interesting there. Awesome. So let's kind of jump back into the main topic tonight. Went off on a big tangent. So covered the first 2 topics, which were if you want to trigger big bass in the summertime, first you need to use fast-moving or fast-falling baits. The second is you need to use a big bait, which is, again, kind of cliche. The third is a little bit more complicated, though, and it's probably going to take a little while to talk about and to explain, but you need to make sure that you are basically hitting the proper timing for catching big fish. And that is a kind of a broad concept, but there are certain times when big bass are more likely to eat, and you have to be prepared for those moments. And I'm going to kind of explain this topic or this concept a little bit in terms of what are some of the triggers that in timing wise that get big bass to bite, when do big bass bite more often, and also how you can prepare yourself in the lulls when they're not biting. So I'll just kind of give you one example here offshore, and then Randy will cover all the shallow stuff as well. But I'm just going to pull up a very popular lake here. We got Kentucky Lake. This is Kentucky Lake in Kentucky, Tennessee area. And basically, Kentucky Lake is called a Tennessee Valley Authority Lake, a TVA lake. And on this lake, there's a dam where they generate current. And this is one of those scenarios where you're going to have a really specific timing of when those big bass are going to bite. And that's going to be when the dam here is generating current, when they're actually pulling current. That's when those bass are going to become the most aggressive. And what you'll find is that when those bass are pulling current, those fish are going to set up on top of offshore ledges and offshore structure. So for example, here is an offshore ledge that's on the Kentucky Lake, Tennessee River, 25 feet dropping into 60 foot. This is a typical Tennessee River ledge spot. What you'll find is that when the current isn't moving, a lot of these fish will set up off the drop-off, out here a little bit more suspended, or they're just going to be kind of hugged to the bottom and inactive. And you can get some of these fish to bite throughout the day, maybe by dragging a Carolina rig or a 10-inch worm or a shaky head around, maybe a drop shot. But you're not going to get a ton of big bites. You might get a few big bites here and there, 1 or 2 big bites every once in a while. But as soon as that current starts generating down here by the dam, what you'll find is that all the bass are going to start lining up on this ledge and pulling up on top of this ledge to start feeding. And I talk about this a lot more in my advanced offshore summer seminar if you guys are interested, on fishmoment.com, and I get into the specifics, the science behind it, all that stuff. So check out fishmoment.com, check out the seminars, the advanced offshore bass fishing seminar for a more detailed description of this. But just at the highest level, that current will start flowing and those fish will start pulling up on top of these ledges and they'll start feeding, and that's when those fish are going to bite. What this means is that when that current's not flowing, those big bass are going to be much harder to catch. You probably have a 10% chance to catch a big bass on this spot, versus when the current is flowing, you might have a 75 or 80% chance of catching a big bass off this spot. And that current might not flow all day. It might only flow for 2 or 3 hours throughout the day, maybe 30 minutes even throughout the day, when that current is flowing at the right amount and the right time to get those fish to bite. So you only have maybe a 30-minute to 1 hour window to capitalize on that big fish bite. What this means is that if you're fishing for 8 hours, 7 hours out of your day is going to be spent in that unproductive time. Now, there's two ways to kind of go about this. And basically the way you can do it is you can either just sit here and camp on this spot all day and just wait for those fish to bite, wait for the current to start flowing. And a lot of guys do that. If you watch a lot of professional tournaments, if this spot has a bunch of big fish on it, literally there might be 4 or 5 boats just sitting here, basically rail to rail. It'll be like you can almost jump into each other's boats and cast on the spot. And 4 boats are casting there for 8 hours. And all of a sudden, the fish will turn on. All the guys will catch a bunch of fish, and then it'll shut off, and they'll catch like 1 fish every hour. That's kind of the way it goes. The other way to do it, which is more what I like to do, is in those 7 hours when those fish are not biting, what I like to do, if I know the current isn't running or anything, I will just basically go look for areas where I feel like big fish are located. And I'll do that by graphing offshore ledges. And a lot of times what I like to do when I go to a really popular lake like this is I'm going to graph all of the unobvious areas, the areas that aren't going to be looked at by other guys. The easiest way to do that on a lake like Kentucky Lake, especially like on a weekend, is just go graph areas where there's no other boats. And a lot of times, if you spend that 7 hours graphing, you'll be able to find a kind of an in-between school, a school that maybe no one else has found or has just moved to a new area that no one else is fishing. And then if you can use something like the TVA app, where you can actually see the current flow, current generation, or just look at like the Corps of Engineers website, you can see when that current starts kicking up, and when it starts flowing a little bit heavier, you can actually run to those areas where you found the big fish, start fishing for those fish, and you can load the boat. So that's kind of the 2 ways you can go about it. Now, let's say the current doesn't flow for whatever reason on your fishing day and there's no current. Well, that doesn't mean these fish aren't going to feed. What it means, though, is that if that current isn't flowing the entire day, or maybe for the last 2 or 3 days or 4 days, there's been no current generation, or let's say you're on a lake that just doesn't have a lot of current generation, that doesn't mean that these fish are not going to be aggressive or not going to eat. They have to eat to survive. But what that means is you have to start targeting bass that are more suspended off the drop. And this is where baits like the big flutter spoon I talked about earlier, things like that, can be used to trigger those suspended fish. And that's a lot more difficult, a lot trickier, and I talk about that again in the Advanced Offshore seminar. Not going to get into all that right here, but that's just something that you kind of have to then learn, is how to target those suspended fish a little bit more. And I even just posted a suspended bass seminar on the website as well, if you guys are interested in that. Now, another thing that happens a lot is if there is no current really going through your lake, you can also catch a lot of fish in offshore brush piles in the summer. So even if the current isn't going, if you can find a really thick, nice brush pile on a point or something like that, a lot of your big fish will set up there. And you're not going to catch as many fish doing the brush pile bite, but if you can run 15 or 20 brush piles and throw a jig in them or something like that in the summertime, if there's no current, this is a lot of times your best way of getting a 4 or 5 pound bite. And you may have to fish 25 or 30 brush piles throughout the day to get those fish to bite, but it definitely works really, really well. And again, on the main Fish the Moment channel, I have a whole video explaining how to fish brush piles, how to find them with your fish finder, everything like that. So just go to the main Fish the Moment channel, Fish the Moment brush piles. Just look that up on YouTube. You'll find a whole video on it. So that's kind of the high level, Randy, of the timing and what I'm talking about. How does it work up shallow?
Well, I think there's one of the things you really have to always remind yourself is when you're talking about shallow water fishing and timing, there's a big distinction between just catching bass and catching big bass. So, if you're just out to catch bass, just keeper bass or whatever size, the timing is completely different based upon the water clarity than if you're out specifically targeting big bass. For example, let's just talk about a typical summertime pattern. If you wanted to fish a Zara spook on points in a lake that's got some pretty clean water, obviously you're going to catch more bass under low light conditions early and late in the day. But that's not the best time to catch big bass. So it's all relative to that. So if we're start targeting specifically on big bass, here's what I found out about timing. First of all, you got to see what type of body water you're fishing on. Timing, it varies between, if you're fishing a tidewater river, timing is completely different. The tide has a big influence on that. If you're fishing a river type lake, say for example, like if you're fishing Lay Lake or Neely Henry in Alabama, your current flows are going to have a big impact on that. I'll say one thing about current real quick, because we had a question here from Dustin. People say, okay, I can't wait for the current to turn on because it's going to get those fish to biting. Guys, I have caught more big fish on those Alabama lakes that have current when there's no current at all than I have any time when they're pulling current. Those fish will get out on the ends of those laydowns, and they're easier to catch. I've caught a lot more on that. So just want to throw that out there. But anyway, the timing when it comes for me to target specifically big bass in a man-made lake is there's two different considerations that I'm taking in here. Number one is the water clarity, and then number two is the type of cover that I'm fishing. And one of the things you're going to find, and this is a pretty consistent rule in bass fishing, is your bigger bass in shallow water are always going to come up in the mid part of the day. And specifically, I've every time that I've caught a big bass in the summertime of the year, I try to note the time frame on there. And there's something about that 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock period before noon. There's something about like 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock that, man, for whatever reason, that is the time where I catch more big ones shallow than any other time. Because I think a lot of it has to do with the angle of the sun, the way it hits the water based upon the cover and water clarity you're fishing. Because you guys know what I'm talking about. If you're out on the lake, say at 8 o'clock in the morning, the water looks a certain way. And then if you're back on the same spot at noon, it's got a different look to it. And then if you're there at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it's got a different look to it. It has to do with the glare that's coming off the water, the way the shade's coming off the bank. There's a lot of different variables. So the thing that I found out more than anything is I want to be in my prime areas during that 10 o'clock in the morning to noon time frame. That's the absolute, best timing for that. Another thing that you need to consider on that are weather patterns specific to that day that you're out there. That has a big deal with timing too, because pay close attention to subtle changes within the weather. I mean, it can be, the wind can be picking up, the wind can be dying off a little bit. There's different levels of cloud covers that come in. One of the biggest things that you want to do is if you've got a day in the summertime of the year where you've got bright sunshine right off the bat in the morning, and then all of a sudden at noon or something like that, you have a little bit of haze coming in, the cirrus clouds start picking up. It's not really cloudy, but the light intensity is different. When that light intensity changes from bright, beaten down sun to some type of a haze, not really a full overcast, to me, that's another time that I want to be in my key areas, is when you have that cloud cover change a little bit. And it's even more pronounced if it goes from sunny to cloudy during the time of the day. But overall, like I said, you have to remember, it's all about determining if you want to get bit versus if you want to catch big ones. If you want to catch big ones, you have to fish those baits up in the middle of the day, and you have to lower your expectations, your bite expectations. Because say, for example, if I'm on a whopper plopper bite, and say if I get 7 or 8 bites the first hour and a half of the morning under low light conditions, and then I go for 4 hours with no bites at all because it's gotten bright, a lot of people want to put it down, and that's the time you need to keep throwing it, because you may only get 1 or 2 bites from 9 o'clock until 4 o'clock, but they're the ones you're looking for. They're the big bass that you're looking for. But just as a general rule of thumb to remember, you're always going to get your big ones when that sun's a little bit higher in the daytime, and you're going to get more numbers under low light conditions.
It's really good stuff. And it's interesting because offshore, obviously the time of day is a really big factor as well. And what happens a lot more offshore, guys, is that with the time of day element, what you'll find is that on any offshore area in the mornings, you're going to have low light conditions, and that usually causes those offshore bass to spread out a little bit more. If you look at any area, any lake, let's say that you have this nice drop off or point here. In general, in the mornings, when you have cloud cover or low light conditions, those bass will spread out across a ledge or a point, and it's a little bit trickier to get them to bite. But as the day progresses, especially into that like past 11 o'clock to like 3 o'clock, those fish are much more likely to group up, whether that's because the sun comes out and gets brighter or because you have more current from wind or from actual current generating from the lake. But in general, my best offshore bite is going to be from 11 o'clock to like 3 o'clock, just because those fish are grouping up more. Now, you still can catch some of those fish that are in that roaming stage, and if you get really heavy current in the mornings, a lot of times those fish will bite as well in the mornings. But kind of like Randy said, 11 o'clock on is really a really good time to catch big fish, but also just in general to catch fish offshore. Now, one thing I find that Randy discussed was interesting is he talked about those slight changes in weather conditions. And I don't find that those slight changes affect offshore bass nearly as much as they do the shallow water bass. Obviously, there's just more water between the bass and the surface offshore than there are up shallow. But I find that when the bass get affected offshore, it needs to be a major weather change, like going from sunny skies to like, super dark cloud cover, or no wind to a 15-mile-an-hour wind. A 5-mile-an-hour wind change offshore doesn't really affect those fish nearly as much as a 5-mile-an-hour wind change up shallow. Would you agree with that, Randy?
Absolutely. And I think just what you said, it has to do with light intensity, because we view light intensity from a different filter from what bass do. And I don't really know what the light intensity looks like through a bass's eyes when it's 6 inches of visibility and 3 foot of water. I mean, we can only guess. Nobody really knows what that is. But the things that I have determined is what I'm sharing here with you guys is the stuff that I have seen that comes through with regular results. It's like this isn't something that just like, happens once a year. This is something that I've put together, and I've noticed a pattern over fishing for 40 years. And it's all about bass behavior and movement. And we got so much to learn about that as far as what those fish do, specifically in shallow water. I mean, we're getting to see a lot more understanding about what bass do offshore with all the technology. But still, when you're talking about the bass that are in shallow water, these are hunter-gatherers. The bass that are in shallow water are a completely different personality of bass than the ones that are out chasing shad over 60 foot of water. They're opportunistic. They blend and change to their environment, on the split second. And, I don't know if we're ever going to figure it out completely, how there are.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's just kind of cool to see the differences too, shallow and offshore. That's what I like to show you guys on this channel. Show you Randy up shallow, myself offshore, and there's so much to learn on both ends. Last thing we want to cover here, Randy, and it's kind of related to the first two topics, but slightly different. The fourth factor we find that's really important in triggering bigger bass is finding a unique bait that no one else is throwing. Regardless if it's a big bait, a small bait, a fast-falling bait, a slow-falling bait, finding something that's different is really key a lot of times to catching bigger bass, because those bigger bass are older, they're more educated, and regardless of what anyone else thinks, bass that are bass in general will get conditioned to certain lures. If you look at the Alabama rig in 2010, 2012, whenever it released, that was the best fish catching tool for like 2 years. You could literally just go throw it down any bank, anywhere, any time of year and catch giant fish. It was really, really easy to catch fish on the Alabama rig. Now, it's still really good, but it's definitely situational. It's not nearly as effective as it was. And I find the same thing happens with a lot of baits. When I first started fishing this big flutter spoon in 2012, 2013, this thing absolutely crushed them any lake I would go to offshore. Same thing with a hair jig. Those fish just hadn't seen it, they weren't accustomed to it. And I was winning tournaments, Randy, when I was in high school and college, just for the fact that I was throwing baits that no one else had access to. I would just get them from friends, or I'd order them online or whatever, and they just weren't in the local tackle shops, and I could just win tournaments just off of that alone. Now it's a little bit trickier, but there's still a subset of baits, or just like a set of popular baits that guys throw. And one easy way to check this, and this isn't the foolproof way to do it, obviously, but 2 ways to kind of check this out is you just go to Tackle Warehouse and just go to the top sellers. I do this all the time. Top selling tackle. I just look at what baits people are throwing, and I basically just try to stay away from all these baits that everyone has up here on the website. I just don't throw these baits that much, especially if I know I'm fishing on a highly pressured lake. Now, do I catch a fish on 6XD crankbait and stuff like that, and any of these baits, a Senko in this time of year? Of course, I definitely do. But if I'm fishing for bigger fish and I want to really target those better than average fish and want to separate myself from the pack, I'm just going to stay away from these top-selling lures, and I'm also going to go to the tackle shop and I'm going to say, hey, what's selling really well? Or just go to the pegs on the store shelves. Well, maybe not right now because there's no baits on store shelves anywhere anyways, but before there was supply issues, basically just go to the shop and see what everyone is buying, what are the most popular colors, stuff like that. And I would do this all the time back in the day. I would just go buy the ugliest looking color that it was overfilled. The whole peg was completely overflowing because no one had bought them. Those are the colors I went and bought, and I find that really, really helped, having a unique color, a unique bait. It's not the biggest impactor of the four we've talked about. It's probably the least important, but it's definitely something that can give you an advantage. What do you think, Randy?
Well, that's what I was just getting ready to say for the shallow aspect of it. To me, the color is the biggest trigger as far as getting those bigger fish to hit. I mean, you can use. I mean, we talked about the variation in different lures and different lure profiles, and when you're using a specific set of lures with a specific color set. You may get a big bass haphazardly or randomly occasionally, but one of the things I've noticed that you have a definite reproducible result, you see a definite trend towards bigger bass is colors. And one of the things that I found out that triggers bigger bass in shallow water to hit is you have to go bright. Because I can't tell you guys how many times that, I've spent hundreds of days fishing Grand Lake in the middle of the summertime, cranking rock. And you can go out at Grand Lake in the summertime of the year and say, for example, if you throw a shad pattern crankbait shallow, you may catch 20 bass, and all of them are, a pound and a half to 2 1/4. But if you go out there and throw a bright chartreuse bait in the same water, you may only catch 3 or 4 bass, but you're going to have a couple 4-pounders in there with that bright color. And I have noticed that over and over and over again is you lose your number of bites by going bright, but you upgrade your size. The same with a spinnerbait is, you can use some type of a shaddy colored spinnerbait, translucent skirt, just some type of a shad pattern. And then if I go to a solid chartreuse skirt, not necessarily upsize the bait any, but just go to the brighter skirt, the grade of fish size that I catch start to go up. Another thing is with jigs. I'll give you guys some juice here. I don't share very often. Shallow water fishing is not many people use a black and yellow or black and chartreuse jig anymore. It was more popular 30 years ago, but it's not now. One of the biggest triggers for shallow water jig fishing in the summertime is using a black jig with a lot of chartreuse or a lot of yellow in it. There's something about that bright flash that will definitely get the bigger bass. You lose your bites. You don't get as many bites as on a brown or black and blue. But when I'm after those quality fish in the summertime of the year, I've always got some type of chartreuse on whatever bait I'm using.
Randy, to your point there, this is actually really funny because while you're talking about that jig color, I was looking at top selling page on Tackle Warehouse. You have the Dirty Jigs tour level pitching jig, a flipping jig just like Randy was talking about. Just to give you guys a perspective on this, look at this. Do you see a black and chartreuse jig? Nope. 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 Look how many colors there are in this jig, Randy, and not a single one of them is black and chartreuse. There's literally like 45 jig colors, and none of them are black and chartreuse. Not even a single one. So, like,
Tommy Biffle would probably get mad at me for sharing that tip because he's like a fanatic on the black and chartreuse and black and yellow.
well, that just blows my mind just to show you that there's no, like, the best-selling jig on Tackle Warehouse. It's not. It doesn't have that color. It doesn't come in that color. And I tie a lot of my own skirts, guys, on my jigs as well. Especially when I'm not using the Fishbone Offshore jig. I put all my favorite color skirt combinations on that thing. But what I do is I'll go to lure customization. I know Randy does this too. And you can go to replacement skirts and just buy tabs of skirting material. And I just buy all of these Skirts Unlimited tabs. I like the flatline rubber. This stuff is really, really cool. Gives a little bit different profile. And I'll tie my own jigs with the black or with the dark brown, Fisher green. I have all these colors. That is really cool. And then you can find some really bright colors in this stuff as well. With your chartreuse and your black, you get a lot of good colors in here. So I always love throwing my own jig skirts on. And I know that's something that you do as well, Randy, is always experimenting with different color skirts, just messing around, changing it up. It makes a big difference. It really, really does a lot of times, especially up shallow, especially even more.
Yeah, it's all, color is a huge deal. I mean, I think a lot of people, they don't, excuse me, they don't really know how to or what to think about color, because you hear on one side of the coin that like color's not that big of a deal, just keep it simple, stay with the basics. But I'm here to tell you guys, color is huge. I mean, I have seen color make a massive difference. I've seen subtle color changes make a big difference in every single lure category out there. And like Johnny says, tying your own skirts is one way that not only you can adapt it to the water clarity changes, but it boosts your confidence tremendously. Just knowing nobody else has that particular color out there.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely something to check out, guys, with tying your own jig skirts. Maybe we'll do a video about that, Randy. That'll be a good video to talk about, like, our favorite. I have like 3 or 4 sneaky jig skirt things. I do some stuff on chatterbaits and stuff with some old school flatline rubber, stuff like that. I have some stuff that from back in the day I would do a lot. I always was messing with stuff when I was like, especially like high school, college. I had extra time on my hands, so I just would try crazy skirt combinations. I have every color tab of all these skirt manufacturers, throw it all together, and some of it worked, some of it did not work, but it was fun to do either way.
I'll tell you, black and chartreuse used to be a big color when I started fishing. How many of you guys out there remember the old tube worm? I remember back when I was like a senior in high school, there was this worm called a tube worm, and it was a fat plastic worm, and this was even before tubes were around. This was like tubes didn't exist then, but it had the tube tentacle tails on this worm, and it came in black and chartreuse. I can't tell you how many hogs I caught on that thing, on that color, and then we just quit throwing it. And it just used to be a major big color, and it just sort of got left by the side for some reason.
Yeah, and a lot of you guys are asking here, does color really matter? I made a video explaining how I feel like color doesn't really matter as much as other things. Like, for example, if you're not fishing around fish, it doesn't matter if you have the perfect color. If there's no fish in the area, you're not going to catch them anyways. I've always said that. I've always talked about that. The bait doesn't really matter if you're not around fish. So obviously, the most important thing for me is you need to be around fish. You need to be fishing the right water with the right scenarios, stuff like that, to actually hold fish and have catchable fish. But once you get that dialed in, you get to the point where you know where the fish are, you can definitely increase the number of fish you catch on a good area by changing color, profile, all these different things. It's just one of those things where it's not putting on a black and chartreuse jig is not going to take you from catching 0 fish to catching 10 fish. It might take you from catching 6 fish to catching 9 fish, though. So if you're already catching them, you're going to potentially catch more fish. But it's not going to be the magic bullet that helps you go from sucking and not catching anything to catching a bunch of fish. Would you agree with that, Randy?
Yeah, and that's what fishing is when you're talking about, lure modifications, lure colors, lure profiles. You're talking about incremental advantages here, because in a tournament situation, just catching 1 to 3 more bass a day is a big deal. and if you can make those subtle color changes, that's what makes the difference between guys that get a check in a tournament and guys that don't get any money.
For sure. Dustin asks, is anyone catching bass using live scope? I can't catch crap or crappie. Go to my channel, Dustin. Just type in Fish the Moment live scope on YouTube. I have videos of me catching 5 and 6 pound bass literally on live scope, watching them eat my swim bait this winter. Live scope works for bass. It definitely does. I caught my personal best bass this year, 10 pound bass with a jerk bait, watching it follow the bait on live scope. So like live scope and bass it works. I have videos on my channel proving it. So forward facing sonar for bass is definitely a deal for sure.
I fished last week. I had an on the water lesson down at Grand Lake, and the guy that I was fishing with, he fished as a co-angler. He fished the BFLs as a co-angler last year. He said every single one of the tournaments he fished last year, that's all that the guys he fished with did, is they did nothing but stare at a live scope the whole tournament. Every single one of them all year. So that'll tell you the impact they're having.
Yeah, and if you guys are interested in the new Humminbird Mega Live forward-facing sonar, I'm posting a video tomorrow, 7 a.m. Central Standard Time, on the main Fish the Moment channel. This is the Fish the Moment live channel, so this is not the correct channel. Go to the main Fish the Moment channel. Go there, and I'm posting a video with Harvey Horn. I went out in his boat with the kind of the pre-release version of Mega Live. I have screenshots, screen recordings, fish catches, everything using Humminbird Mega Live imaging. It's going to be an awesome video. I'm the first person I feel like that's actually going to put out a good video about it. There's like one or two out there that have been kind of like and they didn't really get the settings down right, I don't feel like. So I feel like I've dialed in the settings. I got the best image I could out of the fish finder, and I was in the boat. Just go check out the video. It's posting tomorrow, 7 a.m. Central Standard Time on the main Fish the Moment channel. If you go watch that video, by the way, tomorrow, come back to this video, this live stream, and comment on this video. Or if you're watching this live stream after the fact, go check out my main Fish the Moment channel video, watch it, then leave a comment on this video about what you thought about the Mega Live from my video. And then if you do that, you get a chance to win a free case of Bridgeford beef jerky. All you gotta do, watch that Mega Live video, come back, comment, let me know what you thought, and you'll have a chance to be entered to win a case of Bridgeford beef jerky. Shout out to Bridgeford for supporting the podcast, supporting bass fishing in general. They are a great supporter of bass fishing and of the sport. They help us, Randy and I, do this full time, do it for a living, and they're our one and only podcast sponsor. So definitely support them. Picking up some Bridgeford beef jerky at Walmart. They have it at the Casey's gas stations. They have it at Academy Sports. It's all over the place. At the place. Really, really good beef jerky. I'm addicted. My wife's addicted. Randy got us addicted. We blame him. And it's a good thing because it's very, very good. But also, we eat too much Bridgeford beef jerky, Randy. We really, really do.
You don't really want to get into their Italian sausage. You'll have another addiction too with that one.
Yeah, I eat their pepperoni now in my omelet every morning. So I'm eating their pepperoni, I'm eating their beef jerky. I'm like going to start like sweating Bridgeford at some point. That's just, I'm eating so much of it.
They make a dry Italian salami, like I said, put it on a Ritz cracker, and it's like, God, it's just ridiculous how good it is.
It's good stuff. I mean, we go out now on the lake, and it's like we used to bring a bunch of different snacks. We didn't know what we bring. We bring like granola bars and everything. Now it's just like, no, just load us up with beef jerky from Bridgeford. We're good to go. Like that's our only snack we bring. I bring some pepperoni too with me when we go to the lake. That's good stuff. So, anyways, that is that. So definitely check that out. I'm super excited about that Mega Live video. And I just want to hear what everyone thinks. I tried to be as objective as possible. Wasn't paid by Humminbird to do the video, anything like that. So I want to hear what you guys have to say because Mega Live is getting a lot of crap online, on social media, from the teaser video they posted, from other videos they got posted. Guys are just like going after it. And I feel like my video, well, we'll see. Just go watch the video. Go see for yourself what you think. And I just want to hear. I don't really have necessarily an opinion because I can run any brand I want, so I'm just going to pick the best one. So you'll see, I guess, once Mega Live launches if I'm going to use it or if I'm going to use something else. You'll just know because I'm just going to pick the one that I think is the best. But in the video, I didn't really make my final decision on it just because it's still pre-release. It's not the final product. But just go check out the video, 7 a.m. tomorrow on the main Fish the Moment channel. Definitely do that. Maybe if it's really good, we might have to get Randy one, hook it in. I might even like sneak over to your house, Randy, sneak in the middle of the night, hook up Mega Live. You probably won't even notice. You'll put your fish finder down, it'll be all hooked up to Mega Live, and you'll be like, what is this? Oh, there's a fish. You cast over to catch a 5-pounder, and then you're going to be hooked for life. Like, I have to do something like that to get you to use it.
I could never do. I would lose all my YouTube subscribers if I did that. They'd be so disappointed in me. I'd be boycotted. So.
Well, we're gonna try it one day. Maybe you just sneak out in my boat, drive it around, and like you said, maybe I'll take a ruler or a 6-foot pole. That's my fish finder. You take the live scope and see how we do. I bet it's gonna be a disaster because I'm not gonna know what I'm doing. You're not gonna know what you're doing. That might be the worst video ever. Is both Randy and Jonny 0 because they don't know how to catch fish with that stuff.
Yeah, I'd probably find a big school of white bass or something with it, or crappie. Try to catch them.
Oh man, good deal. Well, guys, one other thing real quick is if you guys are interested, those guys up north, I talked about this earlier, head over to the main our Fish the Moment website, fishthemoment.com, and if you guys are up north and you want more detailed information about bass behavior on your lakes up north, which are basically natural lakes, we finally are doing a seminar dedicated specifically to natural lakes. We've done a ton of seminars on man-made lakes with shad and herring down south, but nothing on natural lakes before. So for those of you who've been asking, those of you who want to check out the seminar, go sign up for this natural lake seminar focused on grass fishing up north, like the big bowls with no creek channels. People ask me all the time, my lake doesn't have creek channels. How do you fish? My lake is covered in grass out to 15 feet. How do you fish it? We're going to cover that. Randy's going to cover the smallmouth fishing aspect, the Great Lakes, how to drift the flats, find the rock piles, all that stuff. So check out the seminar. There's only 30 spots available, and it's going to fill up really fast based on what everyone says. Or if no one signs up for it, then we're just never going to talk about natural lakes again because apparently people always ask for it. But if no one signs up, then we just might cut natural lakes. It's going to be done. So if you want us to talk about natural lakes more, fill up that seminar fast because then it'll let us know that you guys want more information on natural lakes because we can talk about it. I grew up in Wisconsin. I know what's up. Definitely check that out though, fishthemoment.com. And if we get a big response to that seminar, we'll do more natural lake content. I mean, we can do it. Randy and I can go up north. If you guys want us to, we'll go up north and we'll film up north if that's what you guys want. I don't think that's what you guys want based on what I've seen from YouTube, but if you prove me wrong, we will make time to go up north. I'm from Wisconsin. I got family up there. I can go spend a week up there and film a ton of videos on the Lake Michigan, all the lakes up there where I used to fish growing up, Big Green Lake, Nagawicca, all those lakes. I'll make it happen, but yeah, to be determined on that one. So anyways, Randy, that is pretty much it. That was the tips for triggering big bass in the summertime. Any other thoughts to leave guys with to finish up the stream?
Yeah, I think, for the shallow water deal, guys, the thing to just remember is, like I said, try to focus your efforts during the middle of the day. Try to fish those baits that, will catch the big ones, like the big worms, top waters, big square bill crankbaits. Stay with your bright colors. And that sort of gives you a better odd than just lucking into one. But it's not easy to catch big ones shallow in the summer. I mean, that's not the time that there's a lot of big ones shallow. But, you can still catch them occasionally by doing that. For sure. And for those offshore fish guys, those big, giant flutter spoons, big, giant crankbaits, it's getting to be a deal offshore where a lot of guys are catching them on really small stuff and really, really big stuff offshore. There's not a lot in between anymore that's working, at least for me recently. So it's kind of interesting. All the fishing pressure out offshore is really putting the hurting on those fish. So we'll keep making videos about that, guys. Got a lot of really great content coming up. Really excited to share, guys, all the new videos, all the things we're doing. Sorry for the lack of videos on the main channel, by the way, for those who are our loyal viewers. I've been working on a bunch of different stuff. I got a really cool project I've been working on. Can't quite talk about it yet. I've shared it with a few people on seminars and stuff, but it's a really big project that I'm working on for almost 2 years, and we're ramping it up to finish it up. So I'm very excited about that. And then also been trying to train up someone to help with video editing. So between training people on editing and this other project,
I don't have enough time to actually edit the videos myself, so we're going to get back on the grind, get more videos out to you guys. I have a video I filmed June 1st, Randy, that I haven't posted yet, and it's almost July, and it's really depressing because, like, I want to get these videos out, but, like, I just don't have time, so we're gonna get back on the grind, but I kind of took a month to focus on other big things. You guys are going to like what the end result is, so appreciate the patience on that, and anyways, just appreciate all the support, guys. Big shout out again to Bridgeford for sponsoring the podcast and just supporting bass fishing in general. And shout out to Randy for joining and talking to this young offshore addicted guy, teaching me some lessons about shallow water fishing. So thanks again, Randy.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Appreciate you guys taking a little time out of your Tuesday night to join us, and hope to see you guys next week.
Sounds good. See you guys next week, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, back here on the Fishing Moment Live channel. Have a good night. Also, see you tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. on the main Fishing Moment channel for that Mega Live video.